Hello, my friend, and welcome. If you are new, welcome back. If you are not, my name is Ellen. I'm a burnout and stress management coach, and today I am very excited to talk about something that I know is on our minds when it comes to burnout and stress management, and that's the notion of how do I make more time? Time management, productivity, those are big parts of burnout and stress management. And I know for a lot of us, we have back-to-back meetings, we're running from one commitment to the next. Life just feels like way too damn scheduled, right? So how do we find more free time? Whether that's free time to do the things we enjoy or free time to get more things done, to shorten that to-do list, because I know we have a lot on our plates. This might feel like an impossible task, but I have 3 tips that have been game changers for me that have helped me create small pockets of time where I can get those little things done that tend to accumulate at the end of the day. So let's dive in. So my first big tip is to schedule 15 and 45-minute meetings. Now, the reason why this is such a game changer is most of us, we kind of tend to just operate from the perspective that we have to schedule 30 and 60-minute meetings. My recommendation is to shorten the meetings down to 15 to 20 minutes or 45 to 50 minutes. The reason being is that's going to free up 10 to 15 minutes in the hour to do the admin that usually stacks up at the end of your day. Like if you think about it, you have a meeting with like a client or a direct report, you're usually left with some sort of action item at the end of that meeting, right? You have an email or a file you need to send, to-dos that you need to take care of, some sort of admin that goes along with that meeting. Instead of doing it this way, what a lot of us do, we have our 30 to 60-minute meetings, we jump from one meeting to the next, and then at the end of the day, we have a full day's worth of admin to take care of right when we're trying to sign off at the end of the day. What if that admin was done? You can do that in that 10 to 15 minutes of freed up time at the end of the meeting. You can send the follow-up email, you can download and distribute the file you need, you can take care of those to-dos, or you can schedule them into your work week so that they feel wrapped up and taken care of instead of something that you have to deal with at the end of your day. Obviously, the caveat to this, and I can already hear people saying this, but Ellen, that's not enough time. Honestly, in my experience, and I'm speaking as a former manager in saying this, it's only not enough time if you A, overschedule your meeting, which a lot of us do as managers, or B, you're not using your time efficiently. For me, I think one of the things that always came up was if we were having discussions on my team, I didn't want to cut that discussion short, especially if it felt like a really strong discussion. But what I probably could have done is set a timer to ensure that the discussion doesn't run over the time that's been allotted for it. I know another thing that might be coming up is, what if we don't get to something that's a priority? Well, in that case, organize your agenda by priority. And then if you don't have time to get something, you can either push it to the next meeting, schedule another meeting, or ask if people are willing to weigh in via Slack. I actually would probably err on the weigh in via Slack and email as opposed to scheduling another meeting. People are going to be happy with less meetings on their schedule. The bottom line is we often just don't use our time in meetings well. And again, speaking as a former manager, I know I was super guilty of this. A condensed timeline is going to force you to use your time more efficiently. And frankly, you and your team are going to be very, very grateful for that freed up time. Now, this is something that's probably only applicable if you're a manager or a business owner. But if you're not, what you can do is you can bring up the idea to your manager and see if they're receptive to trying it. Maybe they're not receptive to cutting off 10 or 15 minutes. Propose 5 in that case, 25 and 55-minute meetings. Express why and how you really feel like it would be a benefit to you and to your teammates. The worst they can do is say no. So that is tip number 1. So my next tip is to build buffer time into your schedule using a system like Calendly. You're getting a sneak peek into my Calendly account that I use for my day job right now. You can see I'm already abiding our first tip here, which is to schedule a 15-minute phone call. But what I mean with this is every scheduler that I've run across, you can schedule before and after buffer time into the event that you were scheduling. So for example, as it says here, it asks me if I want to add time before and after my events. I do. I want to do that because I don't want to go back to back with calls, back to back with meetings, back to back with clients. If you are somebody who hates that, who wants that little bit of buffer to, as we talked about previously, be able to take care of some of those admin tasks, this is a great way to do it because it automates it into your systems. So you can pick how much time you want before the event, how much time you want after event, and this makes it so that limits the things that people can schedule so that I have that buffer time. This is an absolute game changer. Frankly, just using Calendly as a system is a game changer that I highly recommend people check out because not only do I just send them a Calendly link to schedule the call, but then it automates building in that buffer into my schedule. It also only lets people schedule with you at the times you have defined. I know this is a little bit later in the day. My day job tends to be a little bit later in the day. But it defines the hours when people can schedule with you, which also helps you to kind of reinforce your boundaries. Now, the other kind of bonus thing I want to mention about places like Calendly, I actually also do this with Practice, which is the thing that I use for my business. Practice is relatively new on the scene, but you can see that when I'm scheduling with Practice, see, once again, you have the 15-minute call. You can see that I do a custom duration. Actually, that's probably a bad example because that one I don't actually meet with people during that. Let's look at my Burnout Breakthrough. This is the one I want. So with this one, you can see, once again, I do a 15-minute call and then I give myself buffer before and after. This is the one I use for my business. But what I love is that both of these, both Calendly and Practice, this is kind of a bonus thing. These also make it so that you can block out and include all of the different calendars that you have on your Google account. So let me show you what I mean by that. So you can see, if I go into my Google Calendar account, I have a lot of different calendars that I kind of like to separate things out into. I have my kind of coaching calendar, my appointments, when I'm going to co-working, when I'm, doing stuff for programs I've signed up for, self-care, social activities. And then I've got all of these calendars at the bottom, some of which are arguably unimportant, like the sports teams that I like to follow. But I have all of these calendars, and any calendar that I want to take into consideration when I'm scheduling, I can do that inside of Calendly and inside of Practice. Let's take a look at Calendly because I feel like this is the one you all are more likely to use. If you go into your account and you look for calendar connections, it will go in and you can check which calendars you want to avoid competing with. So if there's something that conflicts with any of these calendars, Calendly will not offer that as a place where somebody can schedule time with me. You can also define where you want the events to be added to. And it actually still surprises me how many schedulers don't allow you to select all of your different calendars, including ones that are just shared calendars. So like these two down here, this is the calendar for my Mighty Networks community. And that is a calendar I actively need to avoid the events that I am offering to the clients that I support inside of my community. I need to avoid those when people are scheduling things. But you would be shocked how many schedulers don't let you avoid those. Same thing with this API that I use for my day job. You would, again, be shocked how many places don't let you connect to those calendars. So that's another kind of bonus tip here. Make sure that your scheduler can connect to these. And then, just like we were talking about, make sure your scheduler allows you to give that buffer time before and after so that you can start to automate building in that buffer into your schedule. So the next tip here is to actively build in and schedule those buffer times in. So we can automate it using our schedulers. We can create a little bit of extra time by shortening our typical meeting times. But the other big thing we can do here is by scheduling the things that are important into our calendar. Now, I believe this does two important things. It makes it so no one can schedule over that time, especially if you set that shit as busy. But the other big thing it does is I find that it somehow kind of signifies that it's important when it takes up space in your calendar. So you can see, looking at my calendar, some of the things that I put in here. Obviously, I have stuff for my business. I have programs that I'm involved in and networking that I do. I have meetings for my day job, but I also have a lot of self-care blocked out in here. I have my morning routine, my workouts, which actually this is going to get moved back to here, which is totally fine. I have decompress time in my calendar to remind me that I need to stop working and wind down for the night. Otherwise, I will just work till I go to bed. I am an achiever right there with you. I have that tendency. I block out time in my calendar to write. This isn't exactly a good example, but back at the end of break, I had a thing in here because I went to oh wait, no, it wasn't that day. Let's go back one more. I have in here that I went to the Seahawks game with my friend, so I had that blocked out as a social activity. I went to dinner with another friend. I had that blocked out as a social activity. I put those things in my calendar because it signifies their importance and it makes sure that nothing gets scheduled over top of them. Now, this is one of those things that is so easy to do and so easy not to do as well. I don't know why more of us don't do this, but in today's world, it's a freaking necessity to block out the things that you deem to be the most important things in your life on your actual calendar. Like, if we don't take more control over our schedules, the world will control them for us. Like, I have talked to so many managers whose calendars are so filled with meetings with their superiors or their direct reports that they don't have time to do the actual work they were hired to do. Same thing with business owners. Their schedules are so jam-packed with client appointments, they don't have time to do the client work. We have to take control of our schedules by giving ourselves space between meetings, which we've already talked about, automating our schedulers to include that space, and creating space on our own. And we got to do this by literally blocking out that time on my calendar, just like I showed you a second ago. I already mentioned that some of the reasons that we should do this are so no one can schedule in that time and to show that it is important by making it take up space on our calendar. But the third reason why I think this is so important is I actually was reading a book the other day where they talked about if you have nothing in your calendar, we have a tendency to allow ourselves to fill that time. So if somebody says, hey, can you help me at this event? If we don't have anything on our calendar, we might be inclined to say yes. I actually broke that boundary this morning with one of my students. I didn't have anything on my calendar, so I scheduled a really, really early morning session that I frankly probably shouldn't have scheduled. We do that when we don't put those important things into our calendar. You may end up helping with something or working on a Saturday because it looks free on your calendar, even though you actually intended to spend that time with your significant other or your kids or whatever it is. So by blocking out that time, even if it's just with a social activity or time spent in our hobby, it demonstrates to us this is important, this needs to take up space in my life, and I'm not going to fill that space with something else. So that is why this third tip is so important. The last tip I have for you, tip number 4, is to give yourself buffer time. So a lot of this has been building buffer into our lives by shortening our meetings, by automating it, by, scheduling that time. But another way we need to think about buffer time, and this is kind of a bonus, if you will, is to think about giving ourselves extra time around those things in our calendar. For example, if you're commuting somewhere to a meeting, give yourself plenty of time to drive from one place to another. I live in the Seattle area. The traffic can be insane, even when it quote unquote should be good traffic. And when I am down to the wire, heading from one meeting to the next or trying to get home in time for a meeting, I am stressing the F out. I don't know about you, but I get very stressed. I do not like to be late. So that's a place where we can give yourself more buffer time. Does it only take 30 minutes to drive somewhere? Okay, give yourself at least 45 or preferably 60 just in case there's an accident, just in case you hit every light on the way home. Whatever it might be, give yourself that buffer time. We can also do this with tasks. Give yourself extra time on tasks. I think we tend to be a little wishful regarding how long it will take to get things done. If we have an email to write, we think, it'll only take me 5 minutes. But inevitably, it probably takes more like 10 or 15, right? Because you're human and you might get sidetracked. You might need to track down notes from a meeting that you need to write said email, whatever. There's all sorts of things that can come up that can extend that time. What if you're creating a slide deck for something? Maybe you say, this will only take 60 minutes. And then inevitably it takes 90 or even 2 hours because we have to research some of the topics more. We're fidgeting with formatting. We have inevitable technology issues. Maybe we just go ham on adding pictures into our presentation. This is what I mean. We need to create buffer, give ourselves a little bit of extra time to be able to complete that task. There's actually a cited law, an often cited law by computer programmers in particular, that is called Hofstadter's law. And the law is, it always takes longer than you expect, even when you take into account Hofstadter's law. This is probably the first time I've ever heard of a law that actually refers to itself, but I kind of love it. In a nutshell, it means even when you think you're giving yourself plenty of extra time, it'll always take more. So err on the side of longer. Give yourself buffer to commute, give yourself buffer for, to complete a task or to finish something. And if for whatever reason it takes less time, awesome. I'm sure you will be stoked to find that you can either get more done, like every high achiever's dream, or if you're feeling particularly rebellious, maybe you even consider leaving early. So these are my 4 tips for making more time in your life. First If you have the power to, shorten your meetings down to 15 or 45 minutes to free up those 10-15 minutes at the end for admin so it doesn't all pile up at the end of the day. Tip number 2, build that time, automate it into your schedulers. Give yourself 15 minutes before the event and after the event or something like that in your scheduling system. That can be an absolute game changer. Tip number 3, schedule personal and or focus time into your calendar, just like I showed you. And tip number 4, give yourself buffer time when you are commuting and in the time you're actually scheduling and planning for a task to take. These are all ways you can create more time, which is going to enable you to get more done, spend more time in your hobbies, spend more time with your loved ones, and it is an easy way to hack kind of creating more time in your life. So with that, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you heard in this video, go ahead and like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments what your favorite tip was. If you have other tips that are really helpful for you, drop those in the comments for us as well. But other than that, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you all next time. Bye.